Welcome to Running Your Stories. Today I'm going to be guest hosting, I guess. I'm going to interview Kev about his recent Hardwolds 80 and more specifically, and in general, his lead up to the spine and his general training, nutrition, running with life in general, I think. So, Kev, you've recently done Hardwolds. You did really well. 4th male, that's incredible. You must be really happy with your performance, I guess.
Yes, yeah, very happy with placing 4th male, 5th overall at the Hardwolds 80. It was a race where I was hoping that I might be able to move up the rankings a little bit, and yeah, really happy to end up where I did.
Yeah, and you said it was a B race though going into it, wasn't it? So
yes.
Did you kind of push a bit harder than you might have thought initially when you knew you were doing quite well, or?
No. So I classed it as a B race because I try not to have too many races where I'm willing to damage my body for. Mm-hmm. So this year it was the Spine Challenger and then the Lakeland 100. They were like 2A races.
Yeah. And
then I've got the full spine coming up in January. So I wanted a race to kind of keep my training focused. And I call it a B race because if it came to it, I would slow down rather than hurt myself or try to keep that mentality for this race. Whereas an A race, I would just keep going.
Yeah. I think that's sensible, to kind of manage your effort a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd actually set off pretty quick in this. I was probably running in 3rd place for a while.
Okay.
The guy that was in 1st at that point, I think he ended up about 8th, if I remember correctly.
So he dropped back.
So he dropped back, yeah, Richard. Who's a nice guy. I spent some time running with him, but at that kind of point where I was kind of passing him.
Yeah.
And then a couple of others kind of caught up and passed me by who'd started off a little slower. So yeah, it was around that kind of time when I had to make the decision about how hard I wanted to push myself.
Yeah.
And I decided that I would stick to my plan of it being a B race, and that I shouldn't risk sort of blowing up and completely trashing myself to try and get further beyond where I was.
Further up, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that quite hard psychologically? Because I know your blog, you mentioned there's quite a different pressure comes. Actually, all right, I could podium here. It's quite a different proposal, I think.
Yeah, it was very different because when I looked at the course, it was about 2,500 meters of elevation, over 82 miles, and it's usually pretty smooth, non-technical trail and road. So that's a fast course, and I worked out on that kind of terrain with that kind of elevation, I should be able to run really within my comfort zone and put in a very fast time and sort of be up, certainly in the top 5.
Yeah.
But sort of seeing that in theory on your pacing and doing it in practice are two different things.
Yeah, definitely.
And then on the day, the weather was horrendous and the conditions were completely different to what anybody expected. It was really, really muddy. And so like the winner of the race was 2.5 hours slower than last year.
Oh wow, that's quite a big gap actually.
Yeah.
Shows you how much terrain plays a part.
So it was actually a much tougher race than what I'd set out for.
Yeah.
So time-wise, I was slower than I expected. And I think it was when I was up around 30 or so miles, exactly like we were talking about with your Javelina.
Yeah.
It's when you're at that point where you've gone far enough that you're starting to feel it.
Yeah, in your
but
legs.
There's still more than halfway to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And so psychologically, it's kind of like, wow, this is tough now.
Yeah.
And that's the point where I knew that if I was going to be in with any chance of being on the podium, that was the time when I could kind of make it or break it, and I would have to push really hard through not slowing down during that time. And I decided, actually, no, I'm going to sort of let it go and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the pressure off myself.
I think that's a good decision, probably. It's always nice when you enjoy races. I mean, you're never going to enjoy the whole thing, but it's good to enjoy the bits you can, at least.
Yeah. Well, that's it, because I got to that point and I really wasn't enjoying it because of the pressure I was putting on myself to try and maintain the pace when the conditions were a lot worse than expected, which was slowing everybody down. Mm-hmm. And I was still trying to maintain my original pace. I think by that sort of time, I'd set a 30k. It was the fastest 30k I'd ever run. I got the fastest marathon time I've ever run.
Oh my God.
I got the fastest 50k I've ever run.
Wow, over that terrain as well, with the mud and everything.
So up to that,
going quickly.
up to that point, I was pushing myself really hard.
Yeah, clearly.
And like I said, I came to a decision point where, this is going to now put a big load on my body to keep pushing this hard.
Yeah.
I think also the early part of the race, there's more tarmac than there is later on. Okay. So that's part of the reason for the more speed early on as well, is because there's tarmac, so you can run it faster. But yeah, it was definitely at that point where it's kind of like, maybe I could even end up winning it, but would I rather win and kind of just put myself through hell, or do I want to enjoy the event?
Yeah, exactly. And it still wasn't your main focus anyway.
No, well, that's right. So I decided to just give myself a little bit of sort of drop the pace slightly and enjoy it. Yeah,
and he still plays very well. So
yes,
a good outcome overall.
And that's the thing with ultras. Once I took the pressure off myself, it took a bit of time to kind of sort myself out and start eating again. And I still had another bit of a wobble a little while after that, just past halfway. But once I got that little wobble out of the way, then I was past halfway, which then, as you know, is a psychological boost.
Definitely a boost.
And then actually my legs started coming back.
Oh, great. Okay.
And then other people started dropping back.
Yeah, it's weird how there's kind of give and take.
So by that time, I was probably down to sort of 8th or 9th place or something. And that's why I'd kind of been getting in a kind of worse state of mind.
Yeah.
But then, as my legs came back and others were dropping off, I started to realise, actually, I'm going to end up in a decent place here.
Yeah. That's really good then.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Scott Jurek earlier. What's your kind of process of dealing with the ups and downs? Because ultras and people who are in life and day, you're going to have mental highs and lows. How do you kind of work through those?
So I've kind of been developing a fairly simple system, because I like simple, especially in ultras, because you lose the capability to think in a lot of detail, and it's based off what I've learned from Javid Bhatti, who amazing athlete who's done the double spine,
wow,
and I think double Thames Path, the 250-mile one.
So you like long stuff, basically.
And so it's based on things that he's been teaching me, but then everybody puts their own slant on it. And it's simply that when problems start to arise, you end up needing to make decisions. And just making it always a decision with 3 options, not 2.
Okay.
And then the whole thinking behind that is that, like, let's say you've got an injury, and you're thinking, okay, should I stop running?
Like stop or carry on?
Yeah, should I stop or carry on? But the problem with that is that you're comparing carrying on at the way you've been running with stopping. Whereas the third kind of next obvious option there is you're going to carry on but at a slower pace.
Okay, actually, yeah.
And so as soon as you put 3 options in, then you start thinking about a lot more of the nuance, and a lot more, you realise that there are more options. Yeah,
it's less black and white.
It's less black and white, and you move away a bit more from the fight or flight, black and white, and you move into the logical thinking.
Yeah.
And so suddenly the decisions actually become easier to make as well, because you've switched it more into the logical part of your brain.
It's more of a rational process instead of more emotional this or that. Actually, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so that's something that I've been practicing in my last few races, That's one of the things, is any decision, move it into a 3 options instead of 2 options. And things like injuries, things like pain, just start looking at it as data, whether it's pain or hunger or thirst or whatever else, and try and think of it objectively. Just like it's some information coming onto a screen that you're reading the screen, and just, okay, how would I deal with this? If it was somebody else telling you about the fact they've got this pain in their leg like this, you'd probably say, okay, so if your leg hurts like that, does it hurt differently if you land your foot a bit more on the outside? Does it hurt differently if you land your foot on the inside?
Yeah.
And that's the way you'd be if you were talking about somebody else's leg pain.
Yeah, of course.
So if you can try and do that with your own as well, then again you're getting into this logical thinking about the data and making much more nuanced decisions.
You kind of like try and detach it from yourself almost,
Yes.
to be able to think more objectively about it. That's quite a good tactic, actually. I have to use that.
Yeah, and it's, over time it develops and gets more sophisticated, but so just trying to have a very simple kind of premise to it that it's easy to remember. Any time when something's coming into my head, because there wasn't, other than that decision about, because again, with that decision about, do I try and keep pushing on at that pace? Do I drop my pace a little bit? The thought was in my head, do I stop completely? Because I was hurting, I was knackered.
It's not surprising, a 50k PB.
Yeah, these things are there in your head, and if you can try and get yourself into the logical thinking. And another kind of minor thing, towards the end of the race, my head torch battery was going down, and so the brightness was going down.
Yeah.
And again, it's just trying to get into the logical thought process. Then you can think through all of the steps. Right, my spare battery's in the bottom of my pack. I know where it is because it's digging into my back. But it's inside a dry bag, which means I've got to put my arm down through everything. So it's going to take some time. I was currently in 4th place with the 5th place guy right with me.
Yeah.
And the next 2, I thought at the time were pretty close behind me. As it turns out, they weren't as close as I thought they were.
But it was the way.
But I was thinking, well, actually, I could slow down just a little to sort out my head torch here, and I could lose 3 places.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, we're in Filey now. Most of it's got street lights and stuff anyway, so I can manage with a dim head torch.
Makes sense.
Just keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm always happier making logical decisions with reasoning behind it. That even if I make the wrong decision, or something gets worse or whatever, I can kind of replay it in my head and follow the decision making process that I've made, and kind of justify to myself, okay, well that's what I was thinking at the time. Okay, maybe some of the information was wrong, and or now I have more information or whatever.
Yeah. But it's quite to kind of like dramatise, isn't it? When you're on the spot in the race, you're tired, it's quite far on. But that's actually quite a good way of breaking it down into smaller chunks and rationalise it all.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a sensible way of doing it. So you mentioned injury in that. Did you ever struggle with that have you had to deal with that before, or? Oh yeah, I mean certainly, we talked about your first 100 miler. My first 100 miler, which was a Spine Challenger in 2018, took me 46 hours. A long time.
That's a long time. And I wasn't necessarily specifically injured in any way, but everything was just swollen to ridiculous proportions and everything hurt. And I was really just staggering to the finish.
Yeah.
And in that race, I kind of went into very kind of dark places inside of myself to manage to keep going. And I didn't like kind of who I was to be able to do that. I kind of became very, very aggressive within my head. I was trying not to show that outwardly, because I wouldn't like to treat other people like that.
Yeah, of course.
But I was extremely aggressive and negative, but it pushed me to the finish.
Yeah, you finished. Yeah.
So I kind of learned that I had that within me. So that gave me that kind of confidence that you've experienced now, knowing that you can get to the end of a massive project. But I realised then that wasn't the style I wanted to do the next one in.
Yeah.
So that's when I started looking into, well, how can I change my mindset? How,
That was kind of a trigger for you almost to start thinking about it much more. Yeah. So it's good to know you have that grit to actually carry on. 46 hours is insane for your first. That's such a long time. That would have scared me off completely if I'd done that. I'm impressed it's still going. But,
well, I was just so determined to then come back and learn a different way and do it again with a different style.
Yeah.
Which I did the next year. I went, in January this year, I did the Challenger again in just under 36 hours, so 10 hours off.
Wow, that's big.
And I finished with a smile on my face, chatting to everybody.
That's
and I was injured this time.
Oh wow! Okay.
A massive amount of pain, but I was still smiling.
Still smiling.
Finally, it was a complete shift of mindset.
Yeah. Well, it's really admirable. You took it constructively instead of, because most people would be kind of scared off by that first. First experience, but.
To be honest, I was scared by it because I was sort of scared of what I kind of had to mentally do to get through it, which is why from that race in January 2018, my next A race was to do that race again in January 2019.
Yeah.
I did other 60-mile races and 40-mile races along the way, but they were all just learning points. They were all go into this, try out different nutrition, go into this, try out different, try out different mindsets and things.
Testing things out, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you said, obviously you've done the Spine Challenger twice and you're now going up to the full spine next year. Well, I mean, most people must think you're absolutely mad. What's your kind of, your why, is your reason for doing it?
I think it's actually, and that's why I very much enjoyed talking with you about your race. Actually, my whys are very similar to your own, in that it's proven to myself that I can.
Yeah. It's quite powerful, actually.
It's also quite addictive.
Okay, it's just a warning now, and we're going to be off for the next 10 years.
Well, like I say, so I proved myself that I could cover the 100 miles in the first one.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the way I did it. So then I wanted to go back. It was very much unfinished business, even though I'd completed it.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking, okay, well, do I want to? It was always my plan, because it was the spine race that got me interested in ultras.
Okay, that was
I'd only kind of vaguely heard about ultras. I was only running sort of 10 miles on my long runs at the time.
Yeah.
And I was handing out cups of tea to people on the spine and chatting to them.
So you were kind of volunteering and helping out. That's amazing.
And this guy from Scottish Borders Mountain Rescue Teams, Duncan Buchanan, who my wife still says she's gonna send him a bill for all the kit I bought since. He convinced me that actually I should be on that start line a year later.
Doing it yourself.
And so a year later I was on that start line. He was there as well, and we set off.
And you've been there ever since.
Yes.
That makes sense. So I guess your full spine's been must have been 2 years in the making now, if you've done the Challenger twice.
Yes.
How have you kind of adapted your training and your nutrition and training in general for that? What are you doing specifically? Well,
one of the things that I got right from the start of my training, which is very similar to what you've been doing, but I didn't have the benefit of some fantastic mentors to help me along the way.
Yeah,
I've found mentors as I've gone on, which is brilliant. But at the beginning, I was making my own decisions.
Like trial and error.
And one of the things I did right from the start was decided that I wanted, because when I started, I just wanted to get fit. That's what I was aiming for, and so I started moving my body 3 times a day.
Wow. Okay.
And so at first, so over the 7 days of the week, that's 21 times I'm going to move my body. And at first it was probably 18 times of walking and 3 times running.
Okay, so it was much a majority.
Yeah, it was majority walking, even if it's like 20-minute walk or whatever. but
Yeah, okay.
3
It's
times
still
a day.
something, yeah.
And then it's just built up from there. And so as I've got fitter, got stronger, I've built that up, and now in peak training I'll be running maybe 8 times in a week, but that's over 5 days. I usually still have 2 days where I don't run.
Oh wow, okay. So you would run twice a day?
Yeah.
What do you do distance-wise? Do you kind of have a set plan, or do you quite play it by ear, see how your legs are feeling?
So I've so far it's been quite successful for me. Before I did the Lakeland 100 this summer was the first time I actually wrote out a detailed plan.
Yeah.
I based it on a plan. There's a really kind of infamous book, Relentless Forward Progress.
Okay, yeah, I think I've heard of it, actually.
Yeah, and that's got example training plans in it for ultras. There's not many of them about.
Yeah, no.
And so I looked at that exact. So it has like training plans based around the volume of training that you're going to do. So it's got like a training plan that maxes out at 50 miles a week, and it's got a training plan that maxes out at 70 miles a week.
In a week? That's a lot.
And it might even go beyond that. I don't quite remember now, but and the nice thing about that training plan, it's a fairly simple sort of premise to it. Is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're going to run. So Mondays and Fridays I have off. Nice. Saturday, Sunday, you're doing back-to-back long runs. But then the training plan in the book is just already worked out that 1 week you might do a longer distance on a Monday, and then shorter Wednesday, and then a bit more Thursday. Another week it might be more equal between the 3 days. And it varies at all through the weeks, as well as cycling up and down. So as you're increasing your training to hit your max, you kind of have 2 or 3 weeks increasing, and then you'll have a week of decrease.
I've heard about
so it's all that kind of stuff's already worked out there.
Okay, that's quite helpful.
That's why I just kind of, because I work in kilometres and this is all in miles, so I just wrote it all out on a spreadsheet, put it against actual dates. But then I also had some things like when I was representing my running club on a called the Dilway relay thing, so I was going to be part of a relay team, so I had to adjust that week's running, and then there'll be another week where there's some social run going on Friday night when I don't normally run.
Of course,
so
you wanna.
So what I did with the training plan was I marked out the sort of total for the week, what I should be doing each day, and if I ever went over, it would be highlighted in orange or red, so a tiny bit over orange, more than like 2 miles over in red, and if I went under, I'd mark it in blue.
Okay.
And the idea being that going over is bad, going under is okay.
Oh, yeah,
as long as you're not getting massively under.
Yeah.
And so I marked the under because, you know, if I was under for a couple of days, I could be over the next day and balance it out.
Yeah.
And through the whole training block, it's back to the consistency that we talked about earlier. I had a really good consistent training block. I think I had a single week where I was maybe 5 miles under, and I think the most I was, all the other weeks I was within 2 miles of the target.
So you managed
distance.
to hit it quite well.
Yeah, and then I went into the Lakeland 100, and you know, with the Spine Challenger being sort of 36 hours, I went 27:37 in the Lakeland 100.
Which is quite a large PB for you, wasn't it? Or at least it was quite far beyond your A time.
Yeah. My A time that I was planning for was 28 hours.
Yeah,
and
so you smashed
you don't
even
usually
that.
hit those times.
Yeah.
You know, I thought anything under 30 hours I'd have been really happy with.
Yeah, so 27 is really good.
So yeah, 27:37. You know, really, but it was the consistency of the training that you know, it proves that it works.
Yeah, yeah, that's very organised with a spreadsheet and everything. It's good to good to have a plan, I guess, and means it's structured.
The main reason for it was to try and prevent myself from overtraining.
Okay, so that's more risk for you than under.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because I start to get into a training block and start feeling good.
Yeah.
And then go off and do too much, and then get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. That you don't avoid injuries.
Yes.
But how do you fit it all in? You've got your mountain rescue volunteering, you've got family, you've got your job. Running could be a full-time job in itself. So I mean,
yeah, I'd rather running was the full-time job. That'd be nice. Yeah, no, it's. I think you fit it in because it just becomes your lifestyle. So, like when I'm talking about like doing little walks and things like that, I almost never drive to the local shop. For example, I'll always walk or run there.
So it's just small habits.
Yeah, and it's just anywhere where you can. Even sometimes like meetings at the Mountain Rescue Base. Now I often drive there because I have to take a load of kit with me, just in case we get called out. But sometimes I'll run to the meeting, run back, and that's 6 miles each way.
So that's quite a big session.
Yeah, so that's that's kind of that would be peak midweek. Sort of like 20k distances, as much as I would do in a single midweek day during the sort of peak training period.
Okay.
So that's one way of fitting that in, though, rather than like you say. Otherwise, I've got to fit in 2 hours of training somewhere in the day, and this meeting, and the travel back and forwards.
Yeah, exactly. It
Whereas,
becomes
well, actually, I can get rid of 40 minutes of travel but that being part of my 2 hour run.
So it's making it more efficient.
Yeah.
Kind of doubling up.
So yeah, it's just everywhere you can get rid of it. Other time, any time that you can find that's wasted. Now I also work from home. I don't have a commute.
Okay, that's helpful.
So that helps. Helps a lot. I have flexible working hours, which helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So then looking forward, I guess, to the spine. It's quite heavy, large rucksacks, isn't it? Just because the weather conditions can be so terrible, I guess it's fair to say. Yeah. How are you starting to run with rucksacks and with weights, or?
So I'm trying things a little differently this year to last year, because around this time last year I got injured, and that was because I'd done a couple of 60-mile races, learning things, trying things out. I had minimal rest, and then went into running with the pack on.
Of course. So
and it just kind of overloaded my legs.
Yeah.
So what I've done this year is, since the Lakeland 100, I've actually been doing a lot of gym work, a lot of strength work in the gym. Okay. And I've very consciously increased the strength of actually my whole body. Particular focus obviously on the legs, but I've been doing probably more upper body stuff than I've ever done before as well.
Yeah.
And then I've been interspersing some much slower long runs with the pack, but not ramping the weight of the pack up too fast. Okay. So not over stressing my body, but getting used to it, getting the strength there. So
it's more sustainable, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you find the cross trainings of a real benefit to you?
Yeah,
you enjoy
definitely
doing that?
It's doing gym work. I find a lot more boring than running. I'd rather just be out running.
Yeah, outside, of course.
But I see the benefit of it.
Okay. At least it's nice when you see a visible change in yourself from what you're doing. That's always makes it worth it, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at Strava you do yoga as well? Is that something
you
do?
So the yoga is actually another part of the mindset training.
Oh wow, okay.
So it all just came together at the right time. There's a program on Netflix actually about I think it's like a 3-part documentary about how the brain works.
Okay.
And watching that, it talked about meditation. And they're doing like brain scans while people are in meditation, showing which parts of the brain are active and things.
Yeah. And
then they explained about different types of meditation. And there's a big overlap between when you're on long runs and you go into flow. It is a meditative state.
Okay.
But there's another part of the brain that isn't triggered in that state, that is triggered by other forms of meditation.
Like yoga, I guess.
Like the meditation that I'm doing in these yoga sessions. And so just around the same time where I'm thinking, okay, I've got a gap in something that I'm doing in my training here.
Yeah.
The other gap that I've been aware of for a while is I'm kind of aware that I'm actually not very good at breathing, which might sound a bit silly, but there's a lot of different methods of breathing.
I have heard about that. Yeah. People breathing wrong. Or
and my wife's training to be a yoga instructor, and she'd been along on like a festival day thing, and she came back and said, there's this guy Mike who's doing this yoga session, and it's not far from where we live, and it's all about breathing and meditation. I said, really? Yeah, I better go and try that then.
Perfect.
It's exactly what I was looking for, and it is exactly that. It is exactly what I was.
Oh, that's great.
That one yoga thing covers
yeah.
exactly that gap. So it's been really, really interesting. Because the reason the breathing and the yoga, the breathing and the meditation go together, is because by pushing more oxygen into your brain than what you're used to, it can make it easier to go into the meditative states. So it's also part of triggering parts of the brain that haven't been, and you're not quite fully turning things off and turning things on. That'd be an oversimplification, but you're helping towards those kinds of things. And even in the very first session that I went to there, with my eyes closed and no external sort of stimulus, I was getting visual effects.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's no drugs involved.
So you find that you can work.
Yeah.
So I always get a bit kind of frustrated and a bit jumpy if I'm doing yoga. I get a bit kind of not bored. But
yeah. So this is very, very little physical stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost all just breathing and meditation.
Oh wow! And you still.
And it
really works.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I've been able to get into some really good meditative states during the sessions.
Wow.
So
it's pretty good feedback then. I have to go try it myself. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So it's called Kundalini yoga, the particular type of yoga. But I think the way that Mike does it is interesting, because he studied it in India in a very traditional way.
Okay.
But then he's actually looked into the science, because there's more and more science now that's actually highlighting that it's kind of putting scientific explanations to some of the kind of mythical stuff.
Yeah.
A little bit like that program on Netflix does, where they're actually looking at it purely from a hard science point of view, but then they're saying, look, this mysticism of yoga says you can get into this mental state. Well, this is what it's actually doing in your brain. And it is completely different to this.
Yeah.
And this is why it helps you.
And they tally up. Okay,
Tally up.
So the science backs it up.
So these things are starting to kind of really come together. And Mike's quite interested in that science side as well, which works for me, because I've always been interested in that side.
So it's rigorous and what you're doing works. Okay.
Well, it's just kind of like, I'm just interested to kind of fill those gaps in my knowledge. So if the person that's leading me through it can also answer those questions and sort of fill some of the gaps, that makes the whole experience more complete for me.
Yeah, it works well. Okay, so you've got the mental side covered and you've got the physical side with your running. I think you mentioned you've got your nutrition. You're quite careful with that, aren't you? Or you're kind of working on fat adaptation and low carb for your racing.
Yeah. So the nutrition side, as I say, when I started running, it was to get fitter and healthier.
Yeah.
And so I started trying to improve my diet and make sure the two kind of went hand in hand. As I started doing longer runs, even before longer races, I started to realise that eating like sweets and even oat bars and things kind of stopped working for me hours into a race, as in I didn't want to eat them anymore.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then if I kept pushing it, I'd then start to feel sick.
Oh yeah, you should go too far.
Yeah, and so I experimented with different types of food and liquid calories and all kinds of things, and I wasn't finding an answer that worked. I was getting very slow towards the ends of races because I was just out of energy because I'd stopped eating hours earlier.
Yeah.
And things like that, and just in bonking, as it's called.
Very technical term, that.
Yeah,
yes, no,
yeah.
about right.
And so I then started to hear about fat adaptation and ketosis and things like that, and I was very kind of wary of it, trying to understand the risks involved in cutting out things from your diet.
Yeah.
Because I do believe we've evolved to eat a lot of different things and
a range of foods.
A range of foods. And so what I then kind of started to almost accidentally discover though is because by this time I'd been running, sort of proper long runs and training for sort of, let's say 18 months or so by this time. And I was training for the White Rose 60 that I did early November last year. And just to fit it in, I had to get up at like 6 in the morning and start running.
Oh, wow.
Now I'd already learned that if I was going to eat before running, I need to eat preferably 2 or even 3 hours before.
Really, that long?
Run.
So
it's really fully settled, otherwise the digestion's taken away blood from the rest of your body.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm thinking, I ain't getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning
just
to
eat
eat
breakfast first
before I go running at 6. I'm just going to take food with me and just run, see how far I get before I need to eat. Okay. And so I was getting up to sort of 4 or 5 hours of running before I felt I needed to eat.
Wow, okay. So mostly 10 a.m. or 11 a.m.?
Yeah.
By that point.
Yeah, and so that was my body just naturally becoming fat adapted by doing runs and by getting up and deciding, I'm going to run before I have breakfast, and it just started to get fat adapted. And that then sort of built, that was kind of a bit of personal experience, and then I learned more and talked to Javid as well, who's sort of well into these things, and he gave me the extra confidence to start looking at going the next steps.
Yeah.
And then I think one of the key things that really made a big change for me was I listened to a podcast that originally started on a Joe Rogan podcast. He has a lady, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, on a few times, and she started talking about intermediate fasting or time restricted eating.
Yeah.
And then I've listened to more of her interviews since then, and what she was talking about was that once your body has gone beyond 14 hours without eating, with your digestion switched off, different processes start to kick in to, some of them are kind of like cleansing and healing processes in your body, and go and look it up and listen to it, because I want to explain it in a very scientific way, but there was 2 things that stood out to me. One was that if you, during those 14 hours of not eating, your body has a lot more energy to dedicate to recovery, like
Actually,
recovery
true.
of your muscles, because it's not having to use energy to digest food.
Actually, I had thought that way before.
So you've got the spare energy to recover your muscles.
Transfer it across.
That sounds pretty good. I'd like a bit of that.
For a runner, yeah. Makes sense.
And then the other thing is that it's been proven that once you get up to 14 hours of fasting, your cardio fitness increases without exercise.
Really? So not even just training?
Yeah,
just going
even without training.
Wow.
If you get so like 14 hours fasted up to 16 hours fasted, your your mitochondria in your cells actually increase.
That's really good.
Which means that your cells work more efficiently, which increases your cardio fitness.
Yeah.
Without training. And I'm thinking, I want some of that as well.
We all want some of that, I think.
Why wouldn't you? So then I went into the time restricted eating.
Yeah.
Of trying to get up to 14 hours fasted each day, and then did that for a while, and was feeling tremendous benefits, especially on recovery. My recovery just kind of changed overnight.
So you could feel the difference.
Yeah,
wow.
I could feel the difference straight away. And then you start looking at, because if you eat something which spikes your blood sugar before you fast, you're not going to last 14 hours.
Yeah.
You're going to be hungry again.
Of course.
So then you start looking at foods that don't spike your blood sugar so much, so that you can then last through the fasting period. And the more you look into that, you then start to become convinced that actually focusing on fats and proteins rather than carbs is a good idea, because then you're not having your blood sugar going up and down, and it can stay nice and flat. And then I got the confidence to try, okay, I'll switch off all the grains, so all the bread. I love bread.
It's quite sad, no bread.
Yeah, I know. I stopped the bread, the rice, the white potatoes, pasta.
Wow, so that's the low carb piece.
Yeah.
So that's how it links in. Okay.
Yeah. So that was then that. Now and so that was, I think I went in the time restricted eating around end of November last year, so about a year ago.
Okay.
And then I cut out the carbs probably around March this year. And where I'm at now, I can just not eat for like 16 hours and then go for a run and I'm fine.
And you're completely fine. That's amazing. I'm starving after like 8. That's incredible.
Yeah, and it's it just it feels completely fine, and I'm very careful about eating. I eat a full range of foods of trying to make sure I get all the micronutrients and everything else. I haven't cut anything out completely because even carbs, I'm still eating vegetables and fruits that have got carbs in.
Yeah, but carbs from other sources.
I'm not eating the processed sugars or the processed flours and grains and things.
Yeah. And do you show a benefit in racing as well? Does that come through?
Well, that's certainly come through. So the 3 big races that I've done since I started becoming fat adapted.
Yeah.
I've not had any of the nausea in the races.
Oh wow! So did you have that in the past?
You
experienced lots of nausea.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, every big race in the before and none since.
Really? Wow, that's quite a stark difference.
Yeah, it's a complete sort of turnaround. And now, because I'm kind of fully into it and it's properly established on the race this time, so this is the thing that I've now kind of got to the level of learning that I'm fat adapted, don't usually eat carbs. But now I want to race. I want to have that extra bit of boost there.
Yeah.
So the night before the race, just eat a normal meal of carbs.
Oh, so you can have carbs then.
Yeah.
I guess glycogen stores. It's good.
And then because you can have about 1,500 calories of carbs in your bloodstream.
Okay.
But that's all you can have, and that's why if people are running only on carbs, you've got to constantly eat. Because if you only got 1,500 calories, you don't get very far through your 100-mile race before you've depleted them all.
Yeah.
So you've got to keep replacing them. Whereas now, in theory, I could run a 100-mile race without eating anything. But I don't like my stomach being that empty and kind of churning and stuff.
Yeah,
so I just eat whatever looks nice.
On the day. Well, that works well.
And
that can be flexible.
And that's what I did in the Hardwolds 80. So when I was kind of starting to realise, this is taking a bit more energy than I thought it was going to and maybe feeling a bit down, so I'll eat a few jelly babies and some Jaffa cakes from the aid station, and it's just kind of I don't usually eat them. That's perked me up a bit.
That's pretty nice. You're not used to having them. It's probably quite a nice treat to get them.
It was. So,
it's good to cheer you up.
Yeah. So worked quite well, and a piece of pizza as well, and so all these things that you couldn't eat because you were having stomach problems.
Yeah, exactly. You got all of those. We should just start doing what you're doing. Maybe I can eat in the race next time.
Yeah. I'd say that, there's a lot of the sort of nutritional and because I do low heart rate training and things like that. I get a lot of the sort of information that I'm basing my training on from a podcast called the Primal Blueprint.
Okay.
But I'd say to anybody that's looking at doing something different, go out and look at all the information and make changes slowly. Don't try and rush into it.
So don't go cold turkey and just
no, because you got to be careful. Even the things that I'm doing, I think are safe. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing them.
Yeah.
But I'm still not a doctor or a scientist with, a 10-year study behind what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm only kind of offering the benefit of my experience, and I can point people to where I've got my information from.
Yeah.
And if somebody goes and checks it all out and comes back and says, I think you've missed this bit over here, I'd be really interested to know that.
Yeah, it'd be good to know. But definitely doing your own research and being quite rigorous in planning and organising all of that. That makes sense. So you're going to apply that same approach to the spine. Have you got a plan yet for your nutrition and for your sleep schedule especially?
So the nutrition, I'll just continue as I have been. I think I've got it well established now.
Yeah, it sounds like it's working well for you.
Pretty happy with that. The nice thing about it is that although I do eat in races, I don't have to eat a lot.
Okay, that makes it simpler if you feel like you feel sick or you don't fancy anything they've got.
Yes.
That's quite good.
But the sleep is the area that's going to be really interesting, because the 3 sort of really long races that I've done so far, my strategy has just been don't sleep. Just keep going.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's an option this time.
For just 7 days, probably not.
So the theory is, and I've tried it to a certain extent, in that even before my very first Spine Challenger, I did an overnight run.
Okay, so you practiced that.
And I bivvied out partway through the night.
Oh, wow.
So I stopped for about 2 hours. I was kind of trying to sleep for about an hour and a half or something. I got up from that and felt totally refreshed.
Really? It made a difference?
Yeah. It felt like I had pretty much a full night's sleep, and
really, wow,
sort of started again. So that's the basic idea, is that because 90 minutes or hour and a half, that's a full sleep cycle. So you go into full REM sleep. And that's my plan, is when I need it, get the hour and a half. I have also tried at other times doing just like a 15-minute sort of power nap, and that's also pretty good.
Okay.
So that's really my aim, is to I guess if you kind of target 2 hours of lying down to try and get an hour and a half sleep.
Yeah.
And probably won't do that until about 36 hours into the race.
So you go through the same amount of time you've done for like Lakeland 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then start sleeping.
Yeah, because actually when I finished the Lakeland 100, apart from sort of passing out and being sick and things, which is another story entirely. I then went for a sleep. I think I slept for 3 hours. It might have even been, it was probably 3 hours. And then I got up and had a shower and had some breakfast and went for another sort of 3 hours sleep.
Yeah.
And again, when you forced your body to stay awake for so long, because with the Lakeland 100, of course, you're starting at 6 p.m.
Oh,
so I'd actually been awake
2 nights
since the Friday morning.
Oh, God. Oh, of course, yeah, because you haven't slept.
Yeah, so I had been awake for 36 hours.
It's a long time.
I hadn't been running for 36 hours, but I'd been awake that long. So yeah, when you forced your body to stay awake for so long, you can't just immediately sleep. You'd think you're just going to sleep for like 12, 15 hours.
Yeah, just can't cap.
But actually, you won't. So just recognising that. I had like 3 hours sleep, got up, had something to eat, had a shower, had another sort of 3 hours sleep, got up, started to feel a bit human again.
Yeah. So is that what most competitors do on the Spine? Is that just you sleep when you can, wherever you are? Or obviously you pick a safe place to...
Yeah, I think there seems to be a lot of competitors on the Spine that there's obviously a lot of very experienced ones, much more experienced than me, that kind of have their plans for these things. But there also seems to be a lot that just don't seem to quite know what their plan is, which surprises me, because what I've described is it's written about, it's in literature, it's known about.
Yeah.
You just got to kind of go and find it.
Just go researching, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite brave going into that distance without a plan, I'd say. Well, it's brave, full stop. So yeah. Because the Spine, it's pretty big. I mean, it's 268 miles. Plus, that time of year, you're not exactly making your life easy, are they?
No. It's just kind of trying to get into a mindset of you're going out to be on foot with the kit that you're carrying, and you're just going to be out like that for a week. And just that's the kind of mindset I'm trying to get into.
Yeah.
Because I think if you start thinking, okay, I'm going to be from here to this aid station, which are still 40 odd miles apart, you're then running the risk of like, oh, I got in that building, I'm going to stay in there for 10 hours or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd rather get finished.
You want to get to the end and be able to stop properly, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that part of the attraction, the kind of quite how tough it is?
Yeah, I think so. It's part of the challenge, isn't it? And as we said, it's the attraction is, can I do it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big question. I'm sure you can, but well in
we'll
January.
see.
How are you feeling about it?
I'm kind of enjoying the trepidation, I'd say, because even like the Lakeland 100 in the summer, it was only my third 100 miler, but even standing on the start line of that, I knew I could do it.
Okay.
You know, it was a hillier and more technical course than I'd done before, but it was I'd done slightly longer distances.
Yeah.
I'd had really good training block. So I stood on the start line of a race I'd never done before, thinking, I know I can do this. And, you know, obviously unless something really big goes wrong.
Yeah, that's quite nice.
I knew I was quite
confidence.
equipped. Whereas this is very different. You know, I think I can do it. I'm setting out to be successful.
Yeah, of course.
But I expect that the spine's going to push me into some problems and into some things that I don't yet know about.
Yeah, it's just that.
And I'm kind of looking forward to it, really.
Unexpected.
Yeah.
I guess in a weird way, I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's good that you're looking forward to it. It's probably that you might need to hang on to that in the rain and the sleet or the wind or whatever they throw at you in January. But yeah, that's great that you're excited. Is there anything? What's been your biggest takeaway, I guess, from your ultra journey so far?
I think the biggest takeaway is the belief in yourself, and it's not, as you'll now know, it's not a magical fairyland that if you believe you can suddenly do anything, but it's you can do so much more than you might think you could.
Yeah.
As long as you're going to put that effort in, that consistency and the training and, you know, all those things that come with it. But everybody is, you know, really very, very capable. What the human body can do is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But the human body and the human mind. And yeah, it's really interesting to see, you know, what can be achieved. Sort of physically and mentally, and that's the big thing for me, really, is seeing that and learning it. It's also the most difficult thing, I think, about it, because it's what is, you know, sort of big admirer of your family, because you all seem to, you know, have kind of learned the secret that, you know, you can do these incredible things, and like for yourself, learn at such a young age.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of people around me who are still kind of held back a lot by not fully believing in themselves.
Yeah.
And it's quite difficult to see that, because you kind of just want to say, oh, but if you believe in yourself, you know, you can do this and you can do that.
Yeah.
But you don't believe in yourself by somebody telling you to believe in yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a constant process, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a process, and it's something you have to do for yourself, and trying to work out how to help others do it is kind of the hard part.
Yeah. Would you recommend running for everyone?
Well, I think probably even 6 months ago, a year ago, or whatever, they said, yeah, you know, everyone should be out running, and I'm kind of starting to realise it's more about people finding what really works for them. And what I start to say to people a lot more now is, I recommend moving.
Yeah.
So find the way of moving that works for you.
So whatever form it is in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's being sedentary that's just so detrimental to physical and mental health.
Yeah. I think in our current society it's quite easy to do that.
Yes, it is. So yeah, find the right kind of movement for you is what I would say.
I think that's sensible. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, best luck in the spine. I'll be tracking you the whole way. Yeah. What's any final words?
Well, I guess this final thing there, if we're talking about the spine, we're going to be launching a campaign to try and encourage children to get out moving.
Oh, great.
Based on the
That's
spine.
really good.
So we're pushing it around all the schools in the area. So it's also a fundraiser for my mountain rescue team.
Okay.
So what we're going to have is, as well as the official race tracking, there's going to be a website on the mountain rescue team page which is going to be tracking me, and then the schools as a year group or smaller groups if they wish can sign up to accumulate their miles together to try and cover the same number of miles that I cover during that week.
Oh wow, okay.
And
try and cover the same distance.
Yeah. So, an example is that the high school that my son goes to in year 7 there, whereas they start in year 7, there's 270 kids in year 7. They've only got to do a mile each.
Yeah, exactly. Less than a mile each.
So then we're asking them for a voluntary contribution of £1 each. So we're going to see how many of the kids in the area and all the local running clubs and see how many people we can get involved in this.
That's a great idea.
And try and encourage as many people as we can to get out moving during that week.
I think it's an admirable cause, definitely. That's really good, yeah. We should try and do something around here as well, but that'd be great. So just get everyone, wherever they're doing it, just get them outside and get them doing a little bit of distance. Yeah. That'd be great. That'd be quite nice for you, I guess, out on the spine, that's happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Extra motivation for you to carry on.
Yeah, well, that's it. It really means that I can't stop.
Can't stop anyway.
Can't stop. Might be a few thousand people watching me.
Yeah, well, just think about all the support pushing you forward through the snow and the wind and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be great. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you for coming on as a guest host. So
no worries. It's been very fun. Thanks.
And thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, thank you.